A knife can be used to kill a person, but in a surgeon's hands, a knife heals.
Yeah.
A hammer can be used to also knock somebody on the head, but in a carpenter's hands, it's an amazing tool.
But Are You Happy is like that brutally honest friend whose advice you'll actually want to take. This season, we explore the psychology of perfectionism, how you can stop taking things so personally, and why group chats can feel so draining, plus what you can do about it. Our friends at Medibank understand that connection matters, especially during challenging times. That's why they've created the Medibank Family Roast, a card game designed to get families actually talking and connecting with each other. Because when family bonds are stronger, Australia is stronger. So get together and play the Medibank Family Roast. Search Medibank Family Roast. Live better with Medibank.
Deepak, I always begin this show by asking our guests the same question, which is, did you grow up in a happy family and was happiness prioritised?
I did grow up in a very happy family. My father was an army doctor. My mother was a storyteller, and they were always celebrative about everything. Looked at every challenge as an opportunity, and enjoyed life, basically.
Do you remember as a kid or an adolescent having any challenges to happiness? Like, do you remember, was there anything that you found you contended with in terms of well-being or satisfaction or finding meaning?
As I mentioned, my mother was a storyteller, and every time before she put me to bed, she would actually sometimes sing or read a story and then stop it at what we call a cliffhanger. Everything was going wrong. And then she would say, I want you to dream up the rest of the story. Make sure it has a happy ending, and also make sure it's a love story. So I got to reframe every challenge as a love story with a happy ending. So the short answer is no.
Oh, that's beautiful. That gives me, I've got a 10-month-old daughter, and that gives me a good idea for what to do before she goes to bed as she grows up. You've recently released a book called Digital Dharma, How AI Can Elevate Spiritual Intelligence and Personal Wellbeing. And it is perhaps the most hopeful exploration of AI that I have read. And it essentially presents a case of how AI can help us live happier lives. You write in the book, human happiness cannot be reduced to a formula, and happiness is as dynamic as life itself, which is exactly what this podcast is kind of based on and what we've seen through every interview we've ever done. You turn to the idea of a personal Dharma instead of kind of focusing on the term happiness. Can you explain what personal Dharma is and how it works?
Yeah, the closest equivalent of Dharma in the West, because there's no such term in the East. I mean, there's no such term in the West. It's a very Eastern term going back to yogic philosophy. So think of if you've ever heard of the 7 chakras, in yoga, they represent 7 levels of human need and expression. So the first one has to do with security, safety. The second has to do with sensual delight, including sexual delight. The third has to do with transformation. The fourth has to do with love and belonging. The fifth has to do with creative expression. The sixth has to do with insight and intuition and imagination and higher consciousness. And the seventh has to do with enlightenment or transcendence. So Dharma would mean, literally, fulfilling all these human aspirations and needs. The closest summary of that would be Joseph Campbell's phrase, follow your bliss. When you're following your bliss, then you're in Dharma.
And
It's how you fit into the whole scheme of things.
Yeah. And when you look at Western culture, do you think you can see that people aren't following their personal Dharma?
Western culture is mostly focused on material success. And the idea that if you have lots of money, then you will be a happy person. And you'll also be fulfilled. So that becomes the defining purpose of life. Now, when you look at the data, only 10% to 12% of your daily happiness experience comes from money, or what we call material success, prestige, and people confuse their self-esteem with their self-worth, which with their net worth. They think net worth is self-worth. But if you look at the data, about 10 to 12% of our daily happiness experience comes from that. If someone wins the lottery, for example, they'll be ecstatic in the beginning, but then in 6 months, they begin to plateau. And in 1 year, they're back to where they were before they won the lottery. 5 years, they're actually more unhappy than they were before, because that becomes their identity. Money becomes their identity, or material success becomes their identity. And all the other things I mentioned are in the background. So there's no fulfillment. There's temporary pleasure and happiness, and that's a big difference between pleasure, happiness, joy, peace. These are different levels of fulfillment. So ultimately, if you don't have peace, then what good is pleasure? Or if you have happiness, but it's always around the corner. If I get this, I'll be happier. If I have the right relationship, the right amount of money, the right job, I'll be happier. The answer is, yeah, probably to a little extent, but then you'll be asking yourself, what's next? Or you'll be concerned that you might lose what you have. So ultimately, true happiness or joy only comes from getting in touch with your spiritual identity.
Do you feel like through all your decades of learning about this and writing about it and speaking to people about it, do you think you can tell when somebody is or is not in their personal Dharma from the outside?
I think 99% are not. So I don't have to guess.
Yeah.
Everybody's walking around like a biological robot.
Yeah.
They take their existence for granted and they recycle their cultural and social and family conditioning. So every generation is recycling the previous generation. And the conditioning is deep. It's economic, it's cultural, it's social, it's religious, it's ethnic. So very few people even have the idea of what's my purpose.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I was going to ask, do you think I'm in my personal Dharma? The answer is no. So you don't even have to try and answer.
You're in the right direction.
Yes, great point. I like that answer. You're essentially asking in this book, can AI act as a guru or a guide? And in Indian tradition, spiritual journeys required a guide. But you point out in the book that there's a modern problem with this idea in that being a guru comes with the cult of personality. I think we've also seen that there are so many times when being a guru corrupts a person with power. It gives them all this power and they don't necessarily use it in a good way. So your suggestion is that AI can fill this role with kind of no ego. In this context, can you explain what AI is and how you think of it in this optimistic way?
Yeah, if you really want to understand what AI is, you've got to go back to what it means to be human. So if you look at deep history, then there's some very interesting things that differentiate human beings, so Homo sapiens, from other species. The first is that we are tool makers. The other thing that distinguishes us, of course, is that we walk upright. We are upright primates, and we have opposable thumbs that allow us to have this tool making. But 40,000 years ago, there was another huge revolution in human evolution, and it's referred to as the cognitive revolution. And all these humans, like other species, had a language for survival and safety. And basically, the language was mating calls, sex calls, because we survive through reproduction, food calls, we need that for survival, and danger calls, we need to avoid danger. But then Homo sapiens created a language for stories, gossip. But then they created other stories. Money is a story. There was no such thing. The beast said, oh, I'll cut your hair, you fix my shoes, but that's not convenient. I'll give you a shell. That's not convenient. I'll give you a coin. Paper money, now we have digital money, okay? So we created models of experience and stories, latitude, longitude, Greenwich Mean Time. These are all human stories. But we didn't stop there. We created stories for biology. We created stories for physics. That's a language, okay? Language. Physics is a language. Biology is a language. Anthropology is a language. Philosophy is a language. Religion is language. Science is language. Technology is a language. And we never stopped. We embarked on the agricultural age, the industrial age, the technology age, the digital age, and now the internet. If you look at history between 1886 and 1903, a period of about 20 years, humans created the telephone, the automobile, aviation, and the light bulb. So if you had been shipwrecked in 1885 on a remote island and then rescued 20 years later, the world you would have entered, you wouldn't have recognized. It would have been you would have leapfrogged into the future. AI, as we know it, is a large language model. It accesses all human languages, the language of physics, this, that, the other, all the languages I mentioned to you. So AI as a large language model has been around only the last 15 years. I guarantee you that if you disappeared today on a remote island and you came back 20 years, you wouldn't recognize the world you would be in. You would have leapfrogged into a new culture, a new civilization, but even your biological organism would be different. You wouldn't be a human anymore. You would be something like a meta-human or a cyber-human.
That's scary.
Yeah, but the primates said the same thing when humans emerged and started to walk upright, okay? The monkeys said, that's scary, right? But we don't think it's scary. So in 20 years, you'll leapfrog into a new biological species because every time you learn something, your neural network changes, the landscape of your brain changes, your gene activity changes. It's called epigenetics. So now we have access to the language of, you mentioned gurus, but go beyond that. You have access to the sages of the Upanishads. You have access to the luminaries of the Old Testament. You have access to all the Western philosophers. You have access to Buddhist thought leaders. You have access actually to every luminary that has existed on this planet and been a thought leader, not only in science, but in spirituality. With AI, you can access all that. And then you can choose what you feel as a guide to your spiritual enlightenment. Having said that, AI is not even intelligent. It's just a large language model, a huge database, a huge base of knowledge, but it's a guidepost for your self-exploration. The key to this, as I point out in the book, is the art of the prompt. You have to know what you're looking for. Most people don't know what they're looking for. They don't even know who they are. They don't even know that they should be grateful for the fact that they exist, because existence is a great mystery. Now, with the right prompts, AI can lead you to the answers to these questions. That's why it's a spiritual guide. You can use it as a spiritual guide.
I love the idea that AI is just a tool and it's our choice
Of course.
how we use it.
Yeah.
And I think we have such a pessimistic view of it. We just seem so certain that it's going to mean the end of times, the end of it's going to.
That's happened with every invention, okay?
Yeah.
A knife can be used to kill a person, but in a surgeon's hands, a knife heals.
Yeah.
A hammer can be used to also knock somebody on the head, but in a carpenter's hands, it's an amazing tool. So also, once a technology comes, it's irreversible.
Yeah.
It's like a child that cannot return to the womb, or it's like once you walk upright, you stop crawling, you can't go back to it. So either you adapt to it or help. I actually believe that given shared vision and maximum diversity of storytellers and talent and shared vision, we could use AI to create a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world, because all the challenges we have right now, but like climate change, like social and economic injustice, like chronic disease, like an unsustainable biology, all these are reversible. And AI has the ability to tell us how to do it. We just have to have the collective will.
I think when I've thought about happiness, and sometimes I think about when I would be at my happiest, and I often picture myself untethered to technology. That's kind of like the default place that I go. And maybe it's because my childhood was less dominated by technology and it's kind of a purer emotional experience. But I think you're right that in this day and age, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I'm not going to live on a deserted island with no technology if I want to live in the world with people and I want to connect with others. What is this idea about a meta-human? Like what do you think, where do you think AI is going to take us in that sense?
New frontiers of creativity and imagination and insight and new experiences. So AI is just the beginning. Soon you'll have what is called ambient computing, which means you will be able to use any surface as a computer, your wall, your tabletop, the floor, even your hand. So that's coming soon, ambient computing. Then you have virtual reality. Then you have augmented reality, which means you take this reality we're in, but you augment it with technology. Then you have extended reality or immersive experiences. And then you have holography as an immersive experience. And all these technologies will extend the range of human experience in a way that is beyond your imagination right now, okay? Also, there'll be therapeutic tools, because if you understand what is called the hard problem of consciousness, many people now believe that the universe we live in, and your body and your mind is part of that universe, is in fact a virtual reality. It's not a fundamental reality, and it's a human reality. So when you look at a tree, you look at a tree through the human eyes and human brain. It's not the same tree to an insect with 100 eyes. It's not the same tree to a bat that sees the tree through the echo of ultrasound. It's not the same tree to a snake that navigates through infrared. So there's no objective world. The world that we call the objective world is a simulation. It's a virtual reality. With these extended realities I'm speaking of, augmented reality, extended reality, VR, and immersive experiences, And right now I've created my own digital twin. It's called digitaldeepak.ai. You don't need to download an app. You can just download it go to Google or any Chrome or any device on your computer or handheld phone, and you can speak to my digital twin in 4 languages, and answer will be given in 4 languages: English, Hindi, Arabic, and Spanish, and soon Chinese and Russian and all other languages. And you can ask it any question about health or relationships or well-being or sleep or stress management or spirituality. It will instantly give you an answer, but it also give you the resources where the answer came from. And then I'm looking at these wearables now, right? That you can see them wearing an iWatch, an Aura, which looks at my sleep, which looks at my exercise, and that will be matched to your lifestyle, your sleep, wake patterns, your nutrition. So then this technology, all the things I've mentioned, will become your personal health coach and will guide you to health, longevity, and because it'll know you. It'll know what time you went to sleep. If you had an argument with your spouse and your blood pressure went up or your blood sugar went up, it'll know that. And it'll be your personal health coach with no intervention. And it'll be what we call a distributed autonomous agent, which means you don't really need Deepak. You need a version of Deepak that you like and is personal to you rather than, say, John or whoever else. So, the future is beyond your imagination right now.
Do you worry that...
I never worry about anything.
I know. You're incredibly peaceful. But in terms of AI and all of those developments you were talking about, a crucial part of happiness and kind of meaning appears to be human connection, that it's human connection and it's our relationships with each other that are the basis for a fulfilling life. Do you think that those kind of technological leaning towards technology might erode that human connection? Well,
if you look at what makes people happy, there are several things that are involved. One is your attitude. Do you look at the world as a problem or do you look at the world as an opportunity? And that's based on your childhood conditioning. If you got lots of attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance, you'll grow up to be a happy person. Or else, if you don't, you can run for office or president or something. There's always an opportunity for unhappy people. That's called politics.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you want to be happy, it's your attitude, number one. Number two, it's what we call fulfillment, whether you have meaning or purpose in life. And number three, it's your relationships. In fact, the fastest way to be happy is to make other people happy. That's all well researched. So looking at that, actually, AI can help you because, during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, I created an emotional chatbot, which was an AI, which is talking to teens. There were 20 million text messages that the AI was having with teenagers who didn't feel judged. The AI would ask them, what did you have for dinner last time? Did your boyfriend return your call, etc.? And then I stopped using it because I realized that there were experts better than me in this intervention. But we actually saw the benefits of AI in mental well-being. Also, I believe you can use AI to create global online and offline communities where people serve each other, where people engage in community work, and where people are there for each other, listening to each other, caring for each other. And this can be both online and offline. It depends on us, our creativity. It does not need to take away the human connection at all. In fact, it can enhance it.
I think that's a really interesting way to look at it because I think a lot of the thinking about this seems to seems to posit that we will almost go backwards, that people will turn away from their phones and turn back to each other.
Some will. Some will. It's their choice, because as I said, every technology comes with a hazard, whether it's the automobile or aviation or crossing the road these days, on the street. So, that's how life is. It contains opposing forces. It's up to you where you put your attention.
When you think about this spiritual journey, and you write in the book about AI being an aid for that spiritual journey, you talk about how spiritual experiences carry you outside your story. Can you explain that idea? Because that blew my mind.
You are born into a world of stories, and it's been interpreted for you when you're born. So, now this baby, let's call it Deepak, and it's an Indian baby. It has a Hindu religion, and this is its economic background. And then you are just in that story. Your options for creativity and experience are limited by the ecosystem of the stories that you're born into. Inherently, there's no creativity in that because, you're just recycling what happened to your parents and they happened. So you go to kindergarten, then you go to middle school, high school, then you go to college, then you get a job, you get children, then you grow old, and then you die. And then the next generation recycles that. And of course, all the conflicts in the world are conflicts about stories, whether they're religious stories or ethnic stories or national stories or cultural stories. They're all ideological conflicts, including economic stories. All the conflict in the world, all the war is about my story is better than yours. And, you better buy into my story. I'm right and you're wrong. Once you break out of your story, you find that you're not tethered to any one version of reality. And that's called spirituality. It's called being in touch with that part of you, which is in the realm of infinite freedom, infinite possibilities for experience, and infinite creativity. As I said to you, 99.9% of people are not there. Spirituality just means breaking out of your story into the field of infinite possibilities. It's called self-realization. It's not your ego identity, but the bigger identity, which is more universal and in the domain of the sacred.
And you have an example in the book about how that kind of spiritual journey, or, that idea of living in your personal Dharma, that love is an example of being in your personal Dharma. Can you explain that?
Love as not just sentimental romance or emotional melodrama. That's not really love. That's self-importance. Love, to be truly love, is the understanding that what you call the other is just like you in a different uniform. That's all. The body looks different. The mind is a different story, but it's still the same essence. That's love.
Yeah.
It's without conditions. Yeah.
Yeah. And I liked that idea because when I thought about love, I thought, love doesn't follow whatever story you put on it.
No, it's like a mother's love for her baby is unconditional till the baby gets an ego, and then they stop arguing.
Stop fighting.
Yeah.
You write, your story is the life you are leading. Your Dharma is the life you're supposed to lead. And then you say that's such an idealistic statement that most people would balk at it or at least hesitate before embracing it. Is it really credible that everyone has a life they are supposed to lead? If so, who or what determines what such a life is? The answer is you. It feels better to make a dharmic choice than a choice that puts you out of your Dharma. What is an example in your own life of a dharmic choice? Like day to day, what's a choice that you make that you know is in your Dharma?
It feels joyous, spontaneous, effortless, and flow. So, the scale of human well-being is survival, adaptation, thriving, flourishing, flowing, and awakening. And most people are in the survival mode, or they're adapting. And therefore, there's resistance to every experience you have. In Dharma, there's no resistance to existence. It's just flow.
And you say in the book, you've got this idea of how in Western philosophy, we have a bit of a concept that if we look inside ourselves deep enough, Sigmund Freud said, you find like a death wish. Whereas in Eastern philosophy, you find goodness. There's nothing to fear about going internal.
The fear they have, everyone, is the fear of their losing their story. They're hanging on or clutching or grasping the ungraspable. So if I asked you what happened to your childhood, you'd say it's a dream. If I asked you what happened to yesterday, it's a dream. What about this morning? It's a dream. What about 5 minutes ago? It's a dream. What about the words that I'm using right now? By the time you hear them, they don't exist. So, Wittgenstein, the Western philosopher, said, our life is a dream. We are asleep. But once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we're dreaming. The Buddha said the same thing. He said, this lifetime of ours is transient as autumn clouds. To watch the birth and death of beings is like looking at the movements of a dance. A lifetime is like a flash of lightning in the sky and rushing by like a torrent down a steep mountain. So we are clutching at a dream which is unclutchable. We are grasping at something that is ungraspable. You can't return to your childhood. You can't return to 5 minutes ago. You can't return to yesterday. And yet all our anxieties by holding on to a dream. What's behind the dream is the infinite possibilities of experience that is called the spirit or the self or the soul. Or you don't have to use fancy words. You say, what is life without a story? It's infinite stories for you to create. You're the protagonist, the director, the hero, and the villain of your own story. Once you realize that, then that's freedom.
The other thing about AI as well is that it kind of crosses that boundary in that it doesn't have to, because AI is not a person, it doesn't have to be religious. It can transcend all those things.
Well, spirituality, once you engage in spirituality, you realize there's no such thing as a person. The person is part of the dream. It's all there is the spirit.
And is that what transcendence is?
That's what transcendence is, yes. When people transcend, there are three components. There are actually, originally what they call the religious experience. These days, it's kind of cool to say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. But the religious experience and the spiritual experience is the same thing. One is transcendence. Second is spontaneous emergence of Platonic values like truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, love, compassion, joy, equanimity, happiness. And the third is the loss of the fear of death, because only the story dies, not the entity that's appearing as a particular story. So that's the religious and spiritual experience. And I think AI can point the way because it learns from others who have gone that way.
You have, for a long time, talked about meditation and your practice of meditation. What does your practice of meditation look like now, like in your daily life?
It's a lot of self-reflection, self-inquiry, mindful awareness in the present moment of perceptual experience of relationships, of the body, of the mind, and transcendence. And actually, my digital twin now can teach you any kind of meditation that you want. So if you go to digitaldeepak.ai and say, I want a meditation for sleep, there it is. And I'll be your guide. Or I want a meditation for repairing my traumatic relationship with whoever. there's a meditation for that. So now meditation can be personalized.
What do you think is kind of the best way for somebody to get into meditation if they've never done it before?
Just a few minutes, even 5 minutes, so observing your breath without judgment, or observing your bodily sensations, or sitting with your eyes closed and doing nothing for 5 minutes is a good start.
And when you started your kind of spiritual journey as it's kind of ended up now in terms of career path and that kind of thing, what did meditation provide you? Like, what can you remember about when you really started to meditate? How did your life change?
Well, the first thing meditation does is it takes away the ordinary stresses of daily existence. Don't perceive threats as other people perceive them. But it's much more than that. It enhances your insight into your own self, into your own motivations. It enhances the power of intention, intuition, creativity, insight, higher consciousness, transcendence, all of that.
And as your career has grown, it's interesting because you have stayed so grounded in these principles of spirituality, but you've experienced so much of what usually corrupts people in terms of fame and having a profile and having such a prolific and achievement-filled life. How have you avoided the trappings of fame? Have you ever felt like you could succumb to how fame can corrupt human beings?
It does, always does. And fame is driven by insecurity, so I've never met a famous person who's not insecure because they are concerned about losing their fame. It's like having a lot of money and waking up in a nightmare that you don't have any, etc. But when you don't attach yourself to it, it keeps you grounded and it keeps you creative and it keeps you secure. There are three addictions that human beings have. One is the addiction to sensation, which is any sensation, food, sex, whatever. The second is the addiction to power and corruption. And the third is the addiction to security. Because the addiction to security is the biggest cause of insecurity. If actually you realize that addiction and fame and power are all actually impediments to your true fulfillment, then you let go of it. It's not there.
Do you conceive of, when you look back on your life, do you think about things like failure or regret, or do those concepts simply not exist to you?
Not for me, no.
Is there anything that if you looked back you wish you'd done differently, or?
No, everything I did was timely when it happened, As a teenager, I experimented with cigarettes and psychedelics and all of that, alcohol. Realized it wasn't worth it.
When you've met other, because you've done so much in this world of fame, what have you seen in famous people? Do you think they have a craving for this deeper spiritual meaning because their lives
Some do.
Yeah.
I mean, people like Martin Luther King Jr. or Nelson Mandela or Mahatma Gandhi, or the great luminaries of spiritual traditions and religious traditions. But for the mass majority of famous people, they're mostly very insecure people.
And then I think they're
more attached to power, influence peddling, cronyism, corruption, and money. Yeah. That's it.
Which I think is a really interesting thing for people to know in this day and age where fame is so valorized and so many people look at fame and think that that's a goal and that's what I should work towards. But there's this other path of meaning and transcendence.
Yeah, but this is the hypnosis of our social conditioning. People are looking at their social media to see how many likes they get or how many dislikes they get, and it influences their state of well-being and the number of likes. They've confused themselves with their selfies.
Yes.
The self has been sacrificed for a selfie.
And do you ever get confused by
No.
Deepak and social media Deepak?
No, I use social media only to contribute
Yeah.
well-being. That's it.
Yeah. And you have such a huge reach through it. You write in the book that it's amazing how technology has been a vehicle for you to be able to feed people's spiritual hunger.
Yeah. It gives me joy to do that. So, and technologies enhance my ability to reach what we call critical mass. Yeah.
We often end this show by asking people whether they're genuinely happy, because we speak to people who have reached all kinds of markers of success that we really value culturally. Is it even worth asking, Deepak Chopra, are you happy?
I think happiness is overrated. I'm at peace. I'm fulfilled. Happiness, like every other experience, is transient. Happiness is because you've experienced sadness. You can't have both, with one without the other. Just like you can't have an up without a down or a hot without a cold. Or any experiences by contrast. So happiness is a contrast to the experience of sadness. And life is both sadness and happiness. But peace transcends both happiness and sadness, and that's called fulfillment.
Oh, I love that. That's a beautiful way to end.